In Genesis 22, it tells a story about Abraham and Isaac. It tells when Abraham led his son, Isaac, up the mountain to be offered as a sacrifice. Now you see, God's going to supply our needs. God told Abraham, said, go up on the sun and offer your son as a sacrifice. Go up on the mountain and offer your son as a sacrifice. And so, as you see, Abraham was all in the will of God, all in the obedience of God. He went up on the mountain and he bound his son Isaac. And the question come to my mind, and it may have come to yours, did Isaac just sit there and let his father tie himself to the altar? Did Isaac just allow, knowing that Abraham was going to kill him, Isaac lay on the altar and allow God to be tied up? Well, my pastor, came in and he brought this to my attention that, Isaac had such a respect for his father that he would respect him even unto death. And Isaac, being around 40 years old at this time, being completely in respect to his father and knowing that his father had such a relationship with God, allowed him to do things. You see, in Genesis 22 and 14, it says, and Abraham called the name of the place Jehovah Jireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. What does that word Jehovah Jireh mean? It could mean my Lord will provide, or my provider. You see, Abraham needed a sacrifice, and when he raised that knife up to kill his son, an angel came and said, Abraham, said, you don't need to do that. There's a ram in the thicket God has laid for you. And so God provided a ram in the thicket, and I've heard people tell it as far as every step of obedience that Abraham and Isaac took up the mountain, God was leading in that sacrifice, leading that ram, or leading that blessing to him. So every step of obedience, there was another step that ram took, where God was going to catch its horns in the thicket and allow him to be sacrificed. And just literally thinking in a sense, there's no way that two men, an older man, Abraham being around 130, around 140, could catch a ram, a full-grown sized ram, and wrestle it and tie it and bind it to an altar. So God had already had him. In verse 13 it says, Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, him a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him for a burnt sacrifice, for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. So in place of that son, God provided this ram. See, God's going to supply your needs. Being obedient to God, He's going to meet your needs. And sometimes it may be a mountain you have to climb. God's not going to just give you your blessing every single time. There's sometimes God's going to ask you to obey Him and climb that mountain. And be in such a position that God can provide. And after this happened, Abraham looked at Isaac and said, hey, I know a Jehovah Jireh. I know my provider. That He's going to provide my needs and provide that sacrifice. See, the children of Israel would never made it to the promised land, would never made it to Canaan if they never left Egypt. The children of Israel had to leave Egypt and had to go through those 40 years in the wilderness to receive the land of promise. If you climb a mountain, if you climb your side of the mountain, God's going to send His blessing on the other side.